Peace to the family. Everybody that will either tune into the show later or join us on in the chat room later for this live stream. I just want to take a minute to before I get started to let Kofi, if Kofi, you got anything you want to say before we go in?
Yeah. Black African power, family. They want to say Fatmo Walaki, Fatmo Iwapele, uh, Mujube Iba Ilakba, Mujube Iba Egungun, Egungun Kiki, Egungun. I always want to give honor and praises to the ancestors because, again, without the ancestors, we wouldn't be here. I'm just ready for this powerful bill, man. Peace to everybody that's in the chat. Peace to those that's going to be coming in. Please like the show, share the show. Please tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend about the show, man. And I'm gonna go on mute, man. And y'all get your pads and your pen out.
All right, all right. So before we get started, man, I just want to give thanks and honors to the ancestors who have paved the way in order for us to even be presenting on a platform like this, or even just in general. The From the struggles of oppression, kidnapping, slavery, the endurance that was shown through those times, uh, over the continental kidnapping and so forth, and the lives that have transcended and moved on and and laid there, just laid everything out for us to be here today, man. I just want to thank all of them. To the people of my city and the ancestors of the city, I'd like to thank you for paving the way as well. If anyone is familiar with Nashville or the history of Nashville at all, then a lot of the sit-ins were a big deal in Nashville. It was the breeding ground for the civil rights movement. A lot of um, a lot of energy came out of the city of Nashville during that era of the civil rights, and rightfully so. It was productive in a sense that it got the attention nationwide, and messages was passed through. You had great leaders who came through to help orchestrate and put forth an effort for us to even talk about Black history and the movements and the boycotts and sit-ins and so forth. So, um, I don't really talk a lot about my family history, but my grandmothers, and greatest grandmother, a lot of them dealt with that era. Um, my grandmother on my mother's side, per se, could pass. Her and her sister used to be able to pass off as white people because they were so light skinned at the time. And even her mother, my great grandmother, could pass off for that in particular areas. They used to be able to catch cabs when they were rejecting it because of how they looked, how fair their skin was. But they were light skinned women. But if uh, you paid more attention to them or you seen them today, then you'd be like, man, I don't know how they did it. But in that time, it was that big of a difference. And that's how things were, from being attacked by dogs, spit on, peed on, called names. There's a lot of things that actually happened in the era. So without boring y'all to death, man, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I know I don't expect a lot of people to actually pop up for this today, because I know the squad's still going in over there on Garfield channel, but we'll get right into it, man, and we'll catch up with those people later. I just don't want to be all day with it. So I got my screen sharing, and we're gonna get right into it. All right, let's go, man. Let's get it in. Peace to Saneb. I see you in the chat, bro. Sutek, the BBO, peace. The first settlers is what is now known as Nashville were Indians of the Mississippian culture who lived in the era about 1000 to 1400 AD. They raised corn, made great earthen mounds, painted beautiful pottery, and then mysteriously disappeared. Other Indians, the Cherokee, Chickasaw, and Shawnee, followed and used the area as hunting ground. The first white men to come to the area were French fur traders, who established a trading post around 1717. The first settlement, however, was not established until 1779. It was then on the banks of the Cumberland River near the center of the present downtown Nashville. Then a band of pioneers led by Englishman James Robinson cleared the land and built a log stock. This was Fort Nashboro, named in honor of General Francis Nash, who won acclaim in the new community that was then a part of the North Carolina. In 1784, the community's name was changed from Nashboro to Nashville. Tennessee became the 16th state in 1796, and Nashville was made its permanent capital in 1843. By 1860, Nashville was a prosperous city soon to be devastated by the Civil War. Because of its strategic location of the river and the railroad, the city was occupied by federal troops for 3 years. The Battle of Nashville, fought in 1864, was the last aggressive action of the Confederate Army. In the decades following the war, Nashville once again experienced a growth in population, business, and industry and education. Another area of growth was in country music, which has grown to the point that Nashville today is known as the Music City, USA. The Black Bottom. For a lot of people out here, the Black Bottom is going to take you on a spin. Because when you hear the bottom affiliated with Nashville, you think of East Nashville and you think about the projects, you think about Quantic Cash, you think about the Clendenny brothers, you think about that era when you hear the bottom in Nashville. However, the Black Bottom was notable as a Negro neighborhood in downtown Nashville until the 1950s. The area was nicknamed Black Bottom because of a periodic river floods that left muddy residue on the streets. This area existed since 1832 as the 6th Ward. On Nashville maps, the 6th Ward had Broad Street as the north boundary and stretched from Summer Street, 5th Avenue northeast to the Cumberland River. Proximity to the river suited workers engaged in the river trade, Irishmen working on bridges, and Negroes working boats. Black Bottom attracted many houses of prostitution, gambling joints, and saloons. Through the 1850s, Black Bottom served as a settlement of cheap houses for poor white immigrants who native Nashvillians held under suspicion and ethnic prejudice. Abutting the Sixth Ward was the Fifth Ward, where slaves of wealthy families resided and worked as artisans, cooks, servants, valets, and laborers. There, black bottom residents also could find menial employment. Many of the Irish, German, Jews, Scots, and other European immigrants often had to take jobs similar to slave occupations and compete for semi-skilled or skilled jobs held by the city's free Negroes, 22% of the black population. European immigrants, however, quickly claimed their white status and abhorred competition from the blacks. Such Negrophobia helped cause the Nashville race riots of December 1856. After the Union Army occupied the city in 1862, there was a great influx of fugitive slaves, causing the Negro population to triple, soon totaling near 30% of the city's people. The Army employed thousands of Negroes to build Fort Negley on the South Cloud Hill, and I'll talk about that in a minute, overlooking the south edge of the city, Black Bottom. And in the 1864, near the fort, the Army settled contraband camp residents brought from the South Middle Tennessee camps. Northern missionaries helped the Army to maintain contraband camps in East Nashville, Edgefield, North Nashville on Church Street, and Edge Hill, where I'm from, on the south side. Now, when you look at Fort Negley, is what they want to call it, okay? Yes, slaves helped build that up there. It was an army fort. For anyone who's interested in knowing where it is located, it is clearly in walking distance from where I grew up in the projects. You just cross over a bridge and boom, you right there at it. But it sits right beside what used to be the home of the Sounds baseball stadium. So they built a baseball stadium next to that, and it's still up there to this day. And they commemorated it. They're not going to tear it down, and you can go look at it now. It does not look like much of a fort today because of some things that has transpired over time with the rocks and all of that. But, you know, I try to leave it out because I actually have a Facebook post in regard to the fort. One of Nashville's 5 Negro city councilmen, Randall Brown, represented the 6th Ward. Upon leaving office, Brown said, "My heart bleeds for my people because of their poor conditions." Nashville Republican Banner, September 11th, 1869 is where he made that quote. The death rate for Negroes per 1,000 persons from diseases were nearly twice that for white Nashvillians. So back in this time in the 1860s, you really had a problem with diseases and poor conditions because of the floodings and things of that nature that we had to endure and live in. Black bottom homes were heated by coal stoves and fireplaces that left a thick haze of black soot covering everything. There was inadequate ventilation, dusty streets, and a proliferation of outdoor toilet facilities. Many residents were illiterate, and a quarter of their children often did not regularly attend the city's public schools. Residents held menial jobs, and unemployment was twice as high for blacks. By 1870, the 6th Ward had 1,844 whites and 1,649 Negroes, all crowded into 741 dwellings. Some residents probably joined the Black Exodus 1869 to 1881 to Kansas, which Councilman Brown, Benjamin Pap Singleton, and other Black Nashville leaders supported. Excuse me. Black Bottom was transformed in the 1880s, particularly at the event of the age of Jim Crow, that whole era. The black population reached the tipping point, threatening to exceed the white population. Many whites fled Black Bottom not only because of the Negrophobia, but because Americans classified as white had access to better wages, wealth, and housing. Also, the development of electric streetcar lines after 1888 allowed wealthy downtown families to move to the streetcar suburbs. Landlords populated Black Bottom with cheap but profitable tenant housing. Wilbert F. Cash, in The Mind of the South, 1941, agrees that a Black Bottom with muddy streets, substandard housing, no indoor toilets, crowded Negroes, and unsightful poverty was not typical in New South cities. Not until the 1880s to 1890s did the plantation system begin to disintegrate, sending a flood of Negroes into town. By 1880, Nashville and 43,350 people, nearly 40% black. By 1890, 73% of Davidson County Negroes resided in Nashville. Crowded, racially oppressed, and impoverished southern conditions forced millions of Negroes and whites to take part in great migrations from 1890 to 1960 to the industrial North. By the 1910, Nashville had 36,523, which was 36% blacks. By 1930, 43,200 Negroes made up to 28% of Nashville's people, and this percentage nearly held steady for the next 70 years. If you look at downtown today, it's reversed. You don't have as many blacks in town as you do today, and everybody know the reason why. We don't have to get into that. Black Bottom included working and middle-class families. The African Methodist Episcopal Church, excuse me, St. Paul, 1874, was built at the northwest corner of Franklin and 4th Avenue North, where the building yet stands. In 1883, the city built Pearl School, 1st through 8th grade. On the 5th Avenue North, although some elite class blacks complained the school was too small and located in Black Bottom and on the border of Hell's Half Acre, Don Doyle in Nashville and in the New South 1880 to 1930 and 1985 said, by the 1880s, a sprawling area filled the shacks and the lean-tos spread up the western and northern slopes of Capitol Hill known as Hell Half Acre. It rivaled Black Bottom for its vice, epidemics, and desperate poverty. Pearl School is located near downtown, not too far from downtown. My grandmother, who grew up in Brentwood, Tennessee, actually went to Pearl School. Now, if you know anything about the distance from Pearl and Brentwood, it's several miles. That's 15 to 18 miles that my grandmother would have to travel just to go to school because she couldn't go to the schools where she lived at in Brentwood. And, you know, so my family was known for always having to go in town. So that was part of that whole little struggle. A lot of people that I know and grew up with, they all went to Pearl. And Pearl is a world-renowned name around our city as well. In 1887, the city authorized high school classes 9th through 11th grades offered into the Meigs Color School in East Nashville and transferred them to Pearl School in 1897. In 1909, Negro progressives lobbied the city to clean up the Black Bottom. The city built a new Pearl High School near Fisk in 1915. Over 400 students graduated from Pearl High School when it was located in the Black Bottom. Notice I said something about Meigs. Meigs is downtown right now, and it has changed itself to an art school. So there's a lot of diversity now at Meigs School. Many people who act, sing, and do these type of things go to actually Meigs School. And some people in the chat may know this dude by the name of Starlito. He's a rapper, all-star. He ran with Cash Money, Yo Gotti, and the Likens. He's an underground rapper. Him and Don Tripp do a lot of music together. And, you know, they got this Step Brothers trilogy going on right now. So Star, he went to Meigs. Black Bottom and surrounding Negro areas were lively and culturally rich. There was a bottling company, clothing store, ice cream factory, a nearby city market on 2nd Avenue, and iron foundry on the river. Black-owned businesses, doctors' offices, and funeral homes. 2 blocks to the south of the Black Bottom were professional black enterprises. You had Herit Medical College on 1st Avenue South, Mercy Hospital, Millie Hill Hospital, and Hubbard Hospital in 1912. The famous, listen to this, the famous Harlem Renaissance writer Zora Neale Hurston likely frequented the streets of Black Bottom after moving to Nashville around 1912 to live with her brother John Hurston, who was a student and 1915 graduate at Herit Medical College. Hurston likely got some of her ideas of Black urban life emerging in soulful and colorful ways through her weekend strolls through Black Bottom. The popular Greenwood Park in 1905 to 1953 was just a nickel streetcar ride east of Black Bottom at Spence Lane and Lebanon Road. Black Bottom began to fade during the Great Depression from 1929 to 39. Half of Negro workers were unemployed. Some family stores burned acid-filled battery salvages in nearby junkyards. The New Deal from 33 to 39 programs placed no investment in Black Bottoms, but did finance relief projects in North Nashville. Pearl High School building, Andrew Jackson housing projects, recreational facilities at Tennessee A&I State College. Those were some of the things that they had relief projects for. Black Bottom residents were among the million Negroes who served in American military forces during World War II from 1942 to 45. After the war, however, federal low-income housing projects were not built in Black Bottom, but sprung up south, east, and north of the area. Massive urban renewal projects from 1948 to 72 forced historic Black businesses and churches out of downtown Nashville. Soon, Black Bottom and Hell's Half Acre succumbed to wrecking balls, bulldozers, new highways, broader avenues, redeveloped projects, and commercial zoning policies. So let's take a look at the Negro in Nashville. And this jewel right here comes to you via Danny. So everybody thank True Story and for William Edmondson. I got a little bit more information on him, but for this presentation, I'm gonna narrow it down. A native of Nashville, was the first African-American artist to be featured in a solo show at the Museum of Modern Art in New York in 1937. Edmondson was a stone carver born to former slaves who worked with a handmade chisel on limestone block discard from demolished buildings, inspired, he said, by religious visions. He did not start sculpting until he was about 60 years old. Guess who? I know many of you may not even know this at all, but we're going to tell you, for the people from Nashville that's looking, y'all should know who this gentleman is on the right. Is Mr. J.C. Napier. Okay, that's who that is. Now, him and other Black members of Nashville business community founded the Nashville 1-cent Savings Bank, now called Citizen Savings Bank and Trust Company, the nation's first bank owned and operated by African Americans. That's another true story and jewel for y'all, even though I had it. All right, so let's move on. MDHA, Metro Department of Housing Authority. To the left, to your right, if you see this image, this comes from my cousin digging through people's stuff, pretty much our great-granddaddies, and finding this. In May 1939, an application was submitted to the U.S. Housing Authority for construction of 2 low-rent housing projects. Approval of this application was received in July of that year, and construction soon began on Boscabo Heights, later renamed in honor of James A. Casey. If you've been around Nashville, you had to hear about Casey. Housing projects is named after these people. Later renamed in honor of James A. Casey, first active board chairman who died during construction, and J.C. Napier, that's on the south side. Also, in August 39, the Nashville Housing Authority also took over the operation of Cheatham Place. If you're familiar, these places that I'm naming, people that are familiar with the city are going to know because they're located in these central parts of Nashville: North Nashville, South Nashville, East Nashville, and Andrew Jackson homes for the U.S. Housing Authority. So you got Cheatham Place and Andrew Jackson. So people should be familiar with them anyway, because they're real close to where a lot of Black people are. Well, they're getting pushed out right now on the north side of Nashville in the south. Here's Bill Perkins. This is another one of Danny's jewels right here for y'all. Vice President, Director of Operations of nation's first African-American owned television station, WTLT-TV, Nashville, Channel 17 in 1974. All right. Jefferson Street over the years. Jefferson Street is a prominent street in Nashville. To the left, we have the Hospital Army Barracks on 12th Street, where Fisk University opened on January 9th in 1866. To the right, we have the infamous and famous painting of the original Fisk Jubilee Singers. Okay, this is when they performed for Queen Victoria in 1873. To the left, we have Mr. Melvin Reed, who happened to stop at a Jefferson Street back in the 1930s and has stayed ever since. Has owned and operated Jefferson Street Bakery since the 1940s. And on the right, we have, this is a view of Herit Medical College in the early 1900s. To the left, we have Herit Medical College being built in the 1930s. And then we have a young man that taped a sign for the late Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. on the front of a bus parking in front of a local NAACP office on Jefferson Street. And that image was taken back in 1968. Here we have the charred cross lines in the snow in front of an NAACP Nashville office on Jefferson Street after someone placed it against the building and ignited it. All right. Now, on the right, we have the famous Ritz. It may look as if better days have passed by the Ritz on Jefferson Street, but a federally funded study holds out high hopes for its renovations. This was in '84. The Ritz is no longer right there. There's a whole nother stuff going right there where the Ritz used to be. All right, so this is Rita's hairstyling studio that we're looking at, and this is on North Nashville Residence Lounge against storefronts in the 2600 blocks of Jefferson Street, and witnessed the eviction of Frank Rita's hairstyling studio and Esquire Cleaners. These two merchants had been told some time ago to move by state officials in order to make room for the highway construction plan in the earlier future. This was back in 1968. If you were listening to me earlier when I was talking about Black Bottom, when they said they did some whole new reconstruction and so forth, they moved all of these people had to be evicted and moved out from where they were doing business at to make room for the highway. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about baseball because it is one of the richest elements of culture for the city of Nashville. And right now we'll talk about the the legend of Bruce Petty and Nashville Negro Baseball Leagues. Several decades before Jackie Robinson integrated the major leagues, Petway and his peers toiled in the shadows of the national pastime in the all-black leagues that existed parallel to so-called organized baseball. From roughly 1905 to 1925, there was no better backstop in African-American hardball than Bruce Petty, and the Defender's article made sure to point out Petty's genius. He is circled right here in the image with the red. I call him Petty, but you know, it's Petway for y'all that really want to follow it. And it's a lot of Petways in my city. And some of them have played baseball. And their lineage will go back to a gentleman like him. Now, from his roots on the semi-pro sandlots of his hometown, Petway blossomed into one of the most sought-after, respected receivers in African-American baseball due largely to his defensive wizardry and his rifle of an arm that moved down base runners in their paths. Petway's most significant contribution to the catcher position was developing and then astounding, but eventually commonplace method of throwing to second base from a squatting position. Confident yet quiet, possessing both of the fiery competitiveness on the field and the self-efficient carriage off the diamond, Petway was in many ways the antithesis of a flashy superstar athlete. Because of that, in baseball, despite the legends of contemporary fans and the universal acclaim of his baseball comrades, Petway remains overlooked and underrated in the annuals of the American game. While other Nashville players like Sam Bankhead and more so National Baseball Hall of Fame inductee and home run specialist Turkey Stearns have gained fame through time, such historical recognition eludes the unassuming humble Buddy. He has consistently been denied induction into the Hall of Fame, even though he was a semifinalist in 2006 when a special Negro Leagues committee selected 17 of the blackball figures for admission. Petway is considered by many to be one of the best catchers in the Negro Leagues, and yet many have never heard of him. Leslie Hapip, a professor at Kent State University, Stark, and member of the Society of American Baseball Researchers Negro Leagues Committee, says. Nashville historian Skip Nipper, author of the 2007 book, Baseball in Nashville, says the African-American baseball tradition in the city stretched back into the late 1880s and begun the first 2 decades of the 20th century with a wide variety of clubs, including the Baptist Printers, Maroons, Methodist Public Houses, North Nashville Tigers, Greenwood Giants, and Nashville Standard Giants. In addition, the ball fields of education institutions like Fisk University and Pearl High School hosted contests on a regular basis. Frequently, out-of-town squads would venture to Nashville to square off against the cream of the local crop. In June 1897, for example, the Rock City Unions, hosted by Louisville Brotherhood at Athletic Park. And then 6 years later, an African-American team from Macon, Georgia, pulled into town across bats with the Nashville Unions. Baseball in Nashville, man, is a big thing. So here we see images of the Giants. Sulphurdale Baseball Park is where they played their games. If it wasn't here, it was in a world-renowned place called Greenwood Farm, which really pretty much is the cemetery now, but you know, you get the gist. Here we have, again, we have the Greenwood Park in Nashville, Tennessee on the right-hand side where we have baseball going on, and then you had the Elite Giants play down in Dale today, a newspaper clipping from August 11th, 1921. And it talks about the Elite Giants and their game time and who they playing and so forth. Now let's remember the Negro, because that's what this presentation is about. So to the left, we have Sarah Estelle. I don't know if anybody is familiar with Sarah Estelle, but she was a free Black woman in slavery era. She ran an ice cream parlor and a sweet shop near here. She overcame the many hurdles faced by free persons of color, and her venture thrived. Her catering firm met the banquet needs of the city's firemen, church socials, and political parties from 1840 to 1860. Tom Wilson Park, formerly located near this site, was Tom Wilson Park. It opened in 1929 and was home to the Nashville Elite Giants baseball team of the Southern Negro League. Owned by Thomas T. Wilson, the facility was one of two African-American owned professional ballparks. Wilson Park also hosted spring training sessions for the Nashville Vols, a minor league team of the Southern Association. Spring training games brought such baseball greats as Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and Roy Cipollini to the park. In 1946, Tom Wilson resigned and discontinued all ball activities at Wilson Park. Samson Keeble. He was a barber businessman and civic leader, became the first African-American to serve in the Tennessee General Assembly, serving from 1873 to 1875. Keeble was appointed to the House Military Affairs Committee and the Immigration Committee. After serving in the legislature, he was elected magistrate in Davidson County and served from 1877 to 1882. Then we have Tennessee's first African-American Civil War volunteers. If anybody is actually familiar with the Civil War era, we had a lot of volunteers locally that enlisted and participated in that whole war. From Gallatin to Murfreesboro, you had people coming through and doing what they do. We have the Greenwood Park, which we've seen an image of. I'm going to be specific with this one. At this location is Preston Taylor area. That's west side. So Preston Taylor, Nashville businessman, religious leader, and a former slave, established the first park to serve Nashville Negro community. Greenwood Recreational Park included a ballpark, swimming pool, and amusements, and public picnic facilities. The park served as the site of the Negro State Fair and Boy Scout summer camp. Greenwood preceded the city's public park for the blacks by 7 years and remained open until 1949. All right, so remember the great Preston Taylor. He also had some projects named after him on the west side. Then downtown, we have the black churches of Capitol Hill. We had the First Baptist Church, Capitol Hill, 1848. Gay Street Christian Church, 1859. Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church, 1887. St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in 1898. Then we have St. John's Ammonite Church, 1863. Spruce Street Church, 1848. These six churches stood within a sixth of a mile of where this marker is, which is literally near the Capitol. All right, so we just mentioned the Spruce Street Church, but it was originally a part of the First Colored Baptist Churches, founded in 1848 as a mission of the First Baptist Church. Nashville's first black ordained minister, the Reverend Nelson G. Mary served as a pastor. In 1865, the church formally gained its autonomy from the white church, Spruce Street Baptist Church, in 1895, and it became. To your right-hand side, we have the infamous Pearl High School. I don't want to hear nothing from the people, you know what I mean, and with the Pearl, I don't want to get into all of that, but I'm going to glow for y'all one time in this presentation. So, yeah, this is an image of the Pearl. Now, today, Pearl is now called Pearl Cone High School, and it doesn't look like this now. This school that you see right here is pretty much like MLK now. It's MLK now. Just keep it gutter. It's still where the projects was. You know what I'm saying? It's still in that same little area, but MLK is what the old Pearl is today. And for a lot of people who may have watched the news and seen the guy from Nashville that got shot in the back by the police officer, this is near there. So MLK was near that incident. All right, so some more historical sites. We're going to look at the Nashville Globe of September 4th, 1908, and the Negro banking concerns. We have a newspaper article right here talking about how we were into banking. And then we're going to take another look at the Ritz Theater on the right-hand side, predominantly African-American area of the city, and is listed as being a Negro theater in film daily yearbooks. So that's the importance of the Ritz. Earlier, I didn't elaborate because I knew I would come back to the Ritz, but it was important to us because it was seen as our thing. All right. Hadley Park, it was established in 1912, first public park for African-American citizens in the U.S. I'm going to say that again. Hadley Park, where everybody be on Sunday and Centennial because they want to drive through Centennial Park by Vanderbilt. But that's a whole nother thing. Hadley Park, okay, historically was the first public park for African-American citizens in the United States. No other park, Hadley Park, which is near TSU today, okay, and really pretty much in the heart of everything at that time in that era of Black greatness. All right, to the right, we have a marker from Citizen Savings Bank and Trust Company. You heard me mention that earlier. Is the oldest continuously operated African-American bank in the United States, formerly known as the 1 Cent Savings Bank and Trust Company, and organized for the uplift of African-Americans. It opened in January 16, 1904. African-American Nashville leaders Richard H. Board, President, James C. Napier, Cashier Manager, and Preston Taylor, Chairman, were among the bank's principal founders and officers. Alfred Jackson. I think a lot of people may have seen his image in other places and popped up on other people's screen, but he was a servant to Andrew Jackson. And you can look him up and read a lot more about this whole thing with Andrew Jackson. But, you know, imagine living to be 99 years old and living your entire life in the same place, never going beyond what you know. That's his story, period. He was enslaved, and he spent the majority, or really all of his life, serving Andrew Jackson and the other Jacksons and so forth. General Hospital, arguably the worst hospital in the history of Nashville, but it served in the 1861 to 65 as a hospital for the Civil War, for the American Civil War. Yep. A lot of people were treated at that hospital, you know, and it's been, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think they may have tore it down now. I know it was closed for a while, but I haven't been over there to verify it. I think they're now building apartments where it used to be. Upscale apartments for people who want to live downtown and pay $600,000 for an apartment, studio apartment. Yeah, they're building them right over there where they've said. Oh, General Hospital. This is the image of the 1876 graduating class of Herit Medical College. It's a long line full of brothers and sisters. This right here is in the Schomburg. This picture on the right-hand side, you can find it in the Schomburg. The Banner Bible Band. The Banner Bible Band, Nashville, Tennessee. This band began the study of our lessons. Well, they began the study of their lessons in 1895 and has continued until the present 1902. This band was pretty much went around singing, doing their thing, raising money, collecting money for the church, and they got paid pretty well too to do what they call God's work. They also did a lot of Bible studying and all of that, man. The first operation performed at Herit Hospital. This is the picture of the first operation performed at Herit. The person who performed it, Doctors Roman's Clinic, first operation performed at George W. Hubbard Hospital, connected with Herit Hospital College, is right here. Proof is in the pudding. All right. And Dr. Roman is the second person on the left. So if you're looking at the left, he got that bald spot in the middle. All right. The African American History of Nashville, Tennessee, 1780 to 1930. This book, written by Lovett, really has the majority of this presentation in it. And a lot of people facilitated in sourcing the information that you see, and not only in this book, but also in the presentation. Since its founding, Nashville has been a center of Black urban culture in the Upper South. Blacks, slave and free, made up 20% of Fort Nashboro settlement in 79. Going back a little bit, I know, but I'm just reading out of the book. From these early years through the Civil War, a growing Black community in Nashville, led by a small group of Black elites, quietly built the foundations of the future society, developing school, churches, and businesses. The Civil War brought new freedoms and challenges as Black populations in Nashville increased, and as Black elites found themselves able, even obliged, to act more openly. To establish a more stable and prosperous African American community, the elites found that they had to work within a system bound to interests of whites. But the aims of this elite did not always coincide with those of the Black community at large. By 1930, younger Blacks in particular were moving towards protest and confrontation as democratization and higher education spread. The lines that distinguished Nashville's Black elite became blurred. And in the city today, you can see some of the what they would call elites, based on where they would live at in the city and how they are a little bit well off than the other areas in the city, and how all the rest of us used to be bunched up together around the city and how things transpired. SSB, which was the Sunday School Publishing Board of the Nashville Baptist Convention USA Incorporated, was instituted in September of 1915. After several debates over the direction of Nashville Baptist Publishing Board under the leadership of Reverend E.C. Morris, who served as president from 1894 to 1922, the publishing board was one of the first Black-owned publishing companies in Nashville, Tennessee, and the South. Mr. Luby, he the man too, y'all. Let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Luby. He was elected to the city council. He has a library and a center named after him. He was a lawyer. You know, he fought for the rights for Blacks in the city, and rightfully so. They needed to honor Mr. Luby with that center and library that they actually have. And my niece actually plays basketball at the Luby Center in a league that's at Luby. Now, there's a newspaper article on Mr. Luby's house being bombed. Yeah. They wanted to bomb Mr. Luby. They wanted to do away with Mr. Luby. They didn't like the way that he was doing things. And it's sad. But he fought for our rights. He did what he had to do. So I like to thank Mr. Luby for his sacrifice and his time. The Colored National Convention was held in Nashville from April 5th through the 7th in 1876. This is an image of it. Frank Leslie illustrated newspaper. The Negroes Convention movement started in Philadelphia in 1830 when the first National Negro Convention convened to ponder the question of mass migration to Canada, given the hopelessness of the contending against oppression in the United States. For several decades, conventions were held at local, state, and national levels, and the issue of immigration was often on the agenda. So, listen, y'all, we've been talking about immigration. We've been talking about moving from oppression and getting out of this stinking country for a real long time. A real long time, man. And, you know, we got to do something. Okay, here's Miss Pierce. I like Miss Pierce, and I'll let the information speak for itself about Mrs. Pierce. She was born in 1864. She died in 1954. She's the founder of the City Federation of Colored Women's Club in Nashville, a founder of Tennessee Federation of Colored Women's Club, and a founder of the Negro Women's Reconstruction Service League. I know two of them kind of sound similar to each other, but they really was different. Now, she organized protests against lack of restroom facilities for blacks in downtown Nashville and was outspoken advocate of equal suffrage. At the invitation of Catherine Talty Kennedy, Miss Pierce was a speaker on May 18, 1920, for the first meeting of the Tennessee League of Women Voters held in House chambers at the Capitol. What will the Negro women do with the vote? She asked. We are going to make you proud of us and yourselves. We want a state vocational school and a child welfare department of the state and more room in state schools. Building upon the momentum of women's empowerment after the ratification of the 19th Amendment, she intensified her efforts for the state vocational school. The bill creating the Tennessee Vocational School for Colored Girls was passed by the General Assembly on April 7, 1921. Miss Pierce became its first superintendent, serving until 1939. So thank you, Miss Pierce, for your right to take up a movement and inspire other women to be just like you, I hope. All right, Miss Huldah Margaret Little Frazier, from 1889 to 1983. Miss Frazier was a native Nashvilleian, was born in 1889 to David and Rebecca Little. After receiving her primary education in September 8 of 1910, Huldah entered the first class of George W. Hubbard's Hospital Training School for Nurses. She gained recognition as an astute scholar and as one willing to render care when needed. Little became proficient in operating room techniques, attending physicians rewarded her diligence and effectiveness by requesting Little's help in the operating room. 3 years after entering the training school for nurses, Little, Lula Woolfolk, and Rhonda A. Pugh became the school's first graduates. Here we have Nelson G. Murray. He was born 1824, died 1884. Nelson G. Murray, born a Kentucky slave in 1824, came to Nashville with his master. In 1840, his widowed mistress willed the 16-year-old slave to the First Baptist Church. He was employed by the church, baptized, and finally freed on November 1 in 1845. Mary began preaching to the First Colored Baptist Church congregation, which had been organized by whites in 1843. Murray was carefully tutored by the Reverend Samuel A. Davison, a white man who served as the black congregation's pastor from 1848 to 1853. After being examined by the local Baptist ministries, Murray became in 1853 the first ordained Negro minister in Nashville. Immediately, he took charge of the 100 members of the First Colored Baptist Church, and in 1849, after the Reverend Davison became pastor, the black congregation moved into an old schoolhouse at 21st north of McLemore Street, now 9th Avenue. After moving to a house on Pearl Street, the church finally found a permanent location on the west side of Spruce Street, now 8th Avenue. Today's site of the Federal Reserve Bank. Under Murray, the First Colored Baptist Church became the state's largest church with over 2,000 members. It became independent of the whites' First Baptist Church in 1866. Here go my man, I got some friends that's related to him. So this is my man right here. McKissick Architects from 1905 to current. Nashville's McKissick architectural firm has designed thousands of facilities since the early 20th century. Peep this, and I hope y'all listening because I'm gonna say this twice. The first of was named Moses McKissick of the Ashanti tribe of West Africa, was sold into bondage to William McKissick. As a slave, he learned to be a master builder. In 1822, he married a Cherokee Indian woman named Marianne. Gabriel Moses, one of the 14 children, was born on November 8th, 1840 and continued in the trade learned from his father, who died in 1865. Moses McKissick III was born on May 8th, 1879 to Gabrielle and Dolly Ann McKissick in Pulaski, Tennessee. So here we have a man who comes from the Ashanti tribe of West Africa as a slave and learned how to be a master builder. And then, yeah, he would later on marry a Cherokee Indian woman. Now, I can't verify her. I don't know nothing about her. But, you know, the McKissick speak for themselves. They are large. They all over the place in Nashville. You got some they all love basketball, but you got some that play football too. And they actively are involved in, you know, after school programs or youth basketball camps and so forth. Benjamin Pap Singleton was born in 1809. We don't know why he died. I don't have a photo for him, as you can see. But Pap called himself the father of the Black Exodus movement that began during the late 1860s and continued into the 1880s, when thousands of freedmen resettled in Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Indiana, and other areas. Singleton led 8,000 blacks to Kansas via steamboat, train, and wagon. Singleton was a former Davidson County slave born around 1809 and raised and trained as a cabinet maker. After being sold and sent to New Orleans, he escaped back to Nashville and then to Detroit in Canada. During the Civil War years, Singleton left Detroit and returned to Nashville, which was under Union Army occupation. He made a living building cabinets and coffins. While he lived in a large Union camp for fugitive slaves along the riverbank in Edgefield, East Nashville, near the Jefferson Street Bridge, when peddling his wars, Pap Singleton, as his fellow freedmen called him, preached to idle, astute former slaves about going west to farm and own federal homestead lands. Mrs. Shepard Moore, 1851 and 1914. Was born February 4th, 1851 in Nashville, Tennessee. Her father, Simon Shepard, hired his time for his master and worked hard to acclimate 1800 to buy his freedom. Ella's mother, Sarah Hannah Shepard, was not as fortunate. Her mistress promised Simon that he could buy Sarah, but the slave owner refused to honor the agreement. Determined that Ella would not remain a slave, Sarah made a threat to take Ella and jump into a river, then see her a slave. Fearing the loss of mother and child, the slave mistress sold Ella to Simon Shepard for $350. Ella remained in Nashville with her father when the mother was taken to Mississippi. Simon married another slave woman and gave $1,300 for her freedom. A race riot hit Nashville in 1856, causing whites to tighten the controls of local free Negroes. When his business debts piled up and could not be paid, Simon fled to Cincinnati, Ohio, to prevent his family from being seized as assets and sold as slaves. Ella Shepard attended a color school and studied music in Cincinnati. Ella demonstrated such exceptional music talent that her father bought a piano and paid for private music lessons. The Union Transportation Company, 1905 to 1907, was chartered on August 29th of 1905 because of Tennessee's new streetcar segregation law, July 1905. The company was capitalized at $25,000 in shares at $10 each. The incorporators were leaders of Black Nashville: Preston Taylor, president; George W. Henderson, treasurer; Richard Henry Board, purchasing agent; James C. Napier, C. Victor Roman, Bishop Evans, Tyree George Washington, William Chappelle, Luke Mason, T.G. Ewing, J.W. Grant, H.T. Noel, and A.T. Sanders, J.G. Merrill, Robert Robinson, and William Beckman. They call that group economics. Some of these people have projects named after them, and they were all in business together to make sure that our people had transportation, banks to go to get a lend or put money in, housing, all kinds of things. The Union Transportation Company was organized to provide a convenient transportation for Negro messengers, merchandise, traffic, and freight throughout the cities and towns of Tennessee and the United States. Although the charter was worded to allow for the operation of streetcar facilities in other parts of Tennessee, Nashville was its immediate goal. This is the first colored Baptist church, 1848 to 1891. I showed a sign on it earlier. Here's the church. Nashville's Black Baptist community originated with the city's first Baptist congregation, which was formally organized in the 1820s, included free and enslaved blacks. Negroes and whites were called sister and brother, although the stations of blacks were denoted as servant cuff belonging to or free man of color. With the formation of the new Christian Disciples of Church, Christ Church, most members defected from the First Baptist Church. It was not until the calling of Reverend Peter S. Gale in 1831 that the congregation began to grow. And in 1934, he was replaced by Reverend Robert Boyd Crawford Howard. This is Bethlehem Center, which is in walking distance of downtown capital of Charlotte Avenue. This is an image. Well, I'm sorry. This is an image of the Bethlehem Center, okay? Beginning in 1894, a group of Nashville women associated with the Methodist Church assisted in immigrating families, and 2 years later, they established the Door of Hope mission, which offered early child care services and a rescue mission for girls. The Methodists in Nashville had been immersed in the social gospel since the 1870s. In 1901, they led the way when the city mission board established the first full-fledged settlement home of Claiborne and Fillmore Streets in South Nashville. 2 years later, it was named Wesley Community House, and its programming was modeled after Jane Addams' Hull House in Chicago, Illinois. Its programs for disadvantaged range from educational and recreational services in 1913. After numerous moves, the Wesley Community House moved into new facilities on Wharf Avenue when it remained until 1857. Officials of Wesley House Development, the J.C. Napier Center, in 1956 to serve the African American community. Earlier, I said this was located near downtown, and I went back and pulled back, but I'm like, nope, that's a different center. Roger Williams University is the oldest university in Nashville. It was burned down by two mysterious fires. Today, we know the university as Tennessee State University. That's not an error. That comes from a direct quote from the source. Unfortunately. But yeah, right, that's what TSU used to be called, RW University. This is the Negro branch of Nashville, Tennessee's public library from 1916 to 1949. This branch library opened at the southeast corner of 12th Avenue North and Hines Street on February 10, 1916. It was among the 4 Nashville public libraries that Andrew Carnegie built in partnership with the city. The opening ceremony was held under the auspices of the Nashville Negro Board of Trade and the Carnegie Library Board of Nashville. The library was planned as a center of community life and learning, a place where many civic organizations met, such as the Colored Women's Chapter of the American Red Cross, a World War I service organization. The building was a 2-story classical revival structure containing 2 large reading rooms, a large auditorium, and a smaller meeting room. The head librarian was Miss Marion Mackenzie Hadley, a graduate of Fisk University. Her assistant, also a Fisk graduate, was Hattie Lewis Watkins. The architects were Robert Sharp and C.K. Colley. The building was constructed of brick and stone. This branch closed in 1949 and was succeeded by Hadley Park Public Library branch in 1952. We have the infamous freedom fighters, Catherine Brooks and Janine Fleming. To the left, freedom rider Catherine Burks Brooks was a senior at TSU in Nashville, Tennessee. She dropped out of school to fight for racial equality. And to the right, we have the beautiful Miss Janine Fleming. who was arrested during the sit-ins. She was one of the students that was arrested during the sit-ins, and her image made Jet magazine. This is the Nashville sit-in story on the left hand. There's an article about the sit-ins. If you see a long line of people that are walking, those are all men and women. I think they said it was thousands of them. Excuse me, that were going downtown to protest the Capitol. You see a lot of them ended up in jail from the sit-ins and so forth. And on the right, you have the Nashville Retrospect magazine that talks about the sit-ins. And look at how them white people put their hands on us back then for just sitting down. But you got to remember, they trained themselves to be conditioned to go into these places and be able to take this type of brutality from people who did not want them there. I'm going to pause this screen right here for you for my sources. And I do want to thank everybody who actually tuned into the presentation and who will go back and maybe watch it or not. It's up to you guys. But I'm going to pause this right here for some of the sources and the information. I'm going to play the video, then we'll bring Kofi back in if Kofi is available to speak, and then we'll talk a little bit. But I do want to say this about Nashville. There was one reason why I avoided elaborating on the sit-ins and the boycotts and a few other things that went on in the city is because everything had its place. There were incidents and events in Nashville that I did not speak on because I wanted to respectfully have more information to present on those at another time if I ever wanted to review a part two. But rightfully so, the struggle of the Negro in Nashville was one that has evolved over time. From the bottom of the barrel through the crux and the crevice of becoming one of the elite Negroes in Nashville, and then transcending into an era of civil rights and fighting for our freedoms. We did everything that we could, and you can see that through work. People pulled together their resources and their brilliance and got things done around Nashville. That just doesn't happen around here. There's less support in the city of Nashville today than it was 60 years ago or 100 years ago. And I think that for anyone that is from Nashville that may view this particular video, we need to get back to that because we can solve a lot of the problems and issues in our communities instead of having the ignorance take over certain parts of the city. They're already running us out of these areas because of gentrification. But again, man, I do want to thank everybody for tuning in. You know, this is not everything. I could have went on for hours, but I had to scale back. I had to force myself to scale back.
How do you think your ancestors got these? They paid a fair price. Then they take it, took everything else.
History is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. It is also a compass that people use to find themselves on the map of human geography. History tells of people where they have been, what they have been, where they are, and what they are.
Walk like a warrior. Walk like a warrior. Walk like a warrior. Walk like a warrior. I ain't talking about no hustler. I ain't talking about no gangster. I'm hollering at them soldiers. Revolutionary culture. Bang on out.
Shawn.
Yes, sir.
Watson said he sent some photos of Pat.
I don't
He
know.
said he sent 2 photos. Huh?
Go ahead. I'm listening.
He said he had sent 2 photos of Pap. He got it here in the chat. Excuse me. I don't see where it's trying to find out where it was at. It was some photos he said about Pap. by a boat, and I guess a place where they migrated from or something. He say he sent it to. I think he say he put it in the back chat. I can't even find the thing no more. Shawn, I sent you two photos of Pap. One on a single photo of him, another him in front of a boat doing a migration. I don't know where he's sending it, man.
I appreciate it. I'll take a look. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So yeah, man, that concludes the presentation, man. And let me see.
I was trying to see if anybody had some questions. I mean, that was a good presentation. I mean, you changed my view of what Nashville was. I thought Nashville was an old cracker town, and it's always been it's been a European town. When you just showed me something I didn't even know about. So I'm gonna go. I missed about 10 minutes of it while ago, so I'm gonna go back and check out the rest of it, man. But great presentation, very informative. Seemed like everybody in the chat, shit, they said she wanted part two. Kayla said she wanted part two.
I ain't doing no part two for a big head, man. I don't know, man. Like I said, this was my Black History presentation. I wanted to do one for the city. Um, a lot of people, man, listen, you will uncover some mysterious stuff when you start digging under your feet. Things that you will not learn in school. And I think that a lot of the people that we talked about in this presentation and a lot of the times, the dates and the eras that I mentioned in this particular presentation, they're not taught in not only in the public school curriculum, but just in during Black History Month. Like we really don't uplift or talk about the baseball, the great baseball players that played in the Negro Leagues who have made it to Hall of Fame. We don't talk about the black bottom. To be realistic, I don't know one person I can call right now to be like, man, that can give me some information on the black bottom. Like, what was the black bottom? Where was it located? What was considered? What parts of the city was considered the black bottom? Why did they call it the black bottom? You know what I mean? Uh, they can't they can't break it down and go back and tell me anything about that era. Some of them, some people have forgotten. But they do remember Mr. Napier. They do remember Luby. They do remember some of the elites in Nashville because they were more talked about and more prominent, and they got things done. They do talk about the collective. There was group economics at its finest. We were segregated. We didn't always have these places where we had to go do things. Some people were lucky enough, the free Negro was lucky enough to open up shops near where white businesses were done because white people liked their shops. So they can come into their shops and get the things. It's kind of like when you see white people today, how they take to soul food or Princess Hot Chicken in our city and things of that nature. You start seeing these people in black places because they love the food and they know they can come there and eat in peace and it won't be no problem. Nobody looking at them funny or anything like that. We conditioned, so we turn our heads and look the other way. For real, we don't look at them. We don't mug them or none of that. People we condition. But I'm not saying that to say anything should happen or anything like that. But through the suffrage of the Negro in Nashville came a lot of great things, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to do the presentation. I actually had another one that I was going to do, but I had to do this one today because Black History, is a short month, and next week Kofi will be ending the month. So, and then I'll come back in March with the presentation that I wanted to do, last week. So, man, again, I'd like to thank everybody in the chat. I didn't see any questions. Just a bunch of people building and having conversations. Oh, the Negro League stats, where they at? Oh man, you know what a Negro League stats are, Zane. They got magazines, books, and all kinds of things dedicated to the stats. Now they said that The person that I mentioned in the presentation, Mr. Petty, he was cold blooded. He was the first person. Remember, I said it in the presentation. He was the first catcher that could throw the ball from a squatting position to second base on the money. He didn't have to raise up. He didn't have to do all that winding up or nothing. He get you. He was eating lunch, and he could hit. But yeah, man, it's quite interesting. Jade, I don't know nothing to do with that. I don't know nothing about that. You know what I'm saying? I can't tell you why our Black History over here in the States is in February and y'all's is in October. Maybe in Australia it's in March. I mean it's in June. So I don't know. I just think that they kind of designated, they just went around, I think, from place to place and designated that right for other people. So we really can't say because it's somewhere, it's somewhere out of our hands, so to say.
Okay, but where's she at? Where? Cause see, I was.
Jade is in London, bro.
Oh, she's in. Okay, she's in
Yeah,
London.
yeah. What
Mm,
you thinking about?
I
You popped on here
I didn't
quick
know where she.
with Jade at, man. Jade overseas. You ain't know that? You need to go subscribe to Jade channel. That's what you do. You need to stop what you're doing right now. Get your cell phone out, click on her icon and subscribe because she put videos up. She over there, man.
Oh, I'm gonna click onto it now.
Yeah, you
Subscribe.
see how I did that, Jade? You see how I did that? See how I
I,
represent you?
I just
Man.
subscribed. Because I mean that's interesting. Because I was supposed to do something today. I was gonna do a presentation revisit, but I ain't gonna mess with it. But I was gonna talk about Carter G. Wilson, the father of what
Yeah,
we call
Vasa.
black.
Yeah, I know.
Black. Mm-hmm.
My bad, Kofi. I was trying to answer Vasa. But yeah, that's why I mentioned Pep because he led the migration. The only reason I didn't have an image because the Nashville archives doesn't have an actual image of Pep after he leaves outside of Nashville. It's like they just did away with Pep. Like they were trying to hide him. So they didn't put an image of him in the archives. A lot of my presentation today comes directly out of the Tennessee and Library archives. I went digging. So when I started pulling up these people, and then I was like, man, this book right here gonna help. So the book helps, but the archives help too. So I went to the primaries. I started looking at the clippings, the newspaper clippings and images and things of that nature. And that's pretty much why I didn't have Pep. But I respected Pep. I appreciate him for what he did. He was trying to get us up out of these conditions.
I sure like how you just jumped right on in when I was talking and just in a row. All right, all right.
I had to answer Vasa, Kofi. Now you can go ahead and talk about Jade and your infatuation with where she located at. Okay.
No, I'm just saying London. I would just find that interesting when she said it wasn't. But anyway, um, tune in next week to the Massa Warrior Clan channel. Um, I'll be doing a presentation called "The Nuba People of the Nuba Mountain," which will be part one. It will be two parts. Part two will be the Nuba people of the mountains, the originators of the wrestling game. They say that these people originated this game that's called wrestling. So we'll talk about that in part two. Part one, we're gonna be familiar. So I'll be doing a double hitter next week. Kofi Pieside TV will be back up and running. We hadn't did anything in 2009. I was trying to wait on some of my other brothers to get some stuff together. I guess everybody still I don't want to do nothing. So I'll jump it off next week. So be on the lookout on the Mossi Warrior Clan channel at 2 p.m. The Nuba people of the Nuba Mountains um, at 2 p.m. on the Mossi Warrior Clan, and then at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, be on the lookout for a presentation on the Kofi Pieside TV by your boy Kofi Pieside called Queen Warrior Muhu Musa. Warrior, a queen warrior from East Africa. So we'll talk about her in the next week. That's all I got again. Appreciate y'all for tuning in to the Monster Warrior Clan. Y'all could have been doing anything else, but y'all stayed. Tune in and rock out with me and your brother Shawn. I'm gonna give the show back to Shawn because I can't do a whole lot of talking on his show. Now on my show, it's the Monster Warrior Clan show, but on Well, when he do his thing, it is the any Herit Khalfani show. So then, all right, peace and black African power, family.
We're gonna shine through the shade. We're gonna shine through the shade. I just got quiet the whole time and let him go in and do his thing. And then here he go. He won't let. Okay, we're gonna shine through the shade. Now don't mute your mic. No, take your mute off. Don't laugh. We want to hear you laugh too.
What's up?
No, we want to laugh with you. What you laughing at?
Laughing at you, man.
Yeah, we want to laugh too. Shoot. All right, y'all, man. That's unless Kobe got some more you want to say, man. I'm actually done.
Oh, that's it, man. You know, just go back, and check the presentation out my brother did today in the archives and refresh yourself. I know I'm gonna go back and check out the presentation again later on this evening, man. And again, appreciate the support. See y'all next week.
Peace.
Hey.